Hey, everybody. Here we are, another interview on the Art of Intervention project. We're so excited to have Dr. Lacey Berumen with us. We come from a different perspective today and talking about probation and the system and prison and families, which we haven't talked about yet on the project. So I'm so excited to have you here. And Dr. Lacey Berumen, when you describe yourself, who would you say you are?
First, let me say thank you for having me. Um, I would describe myself as a passionate advocate for individuals and families that are challenged with either mental health or substance abuse issues.
Yeah, and they all tie in together, don't they?
Yes, they do. Yes, they
And
do.
again, and you have seen this because I know we're going to talk. We have a little different perspective on this, but tell people kind of like what your history is because you've seen a lot in this industry. The landscape has changed, and you're kind of definitely on the front lines for sure.
Thanks for aging me.
No, I didn't
So
say
I
how
started.
long. I
So
didn't say
I
how long.
started in the days where there were covered wagons. No, I'm. So I have been in behavioral health for about 25 years. Um, I have done all aspects of clinical work within behavioral health, from inpatient hospitals. I worked at a level 1 trauma center doing behavioral assessments for 17 years on the night shift, to outpatient DUI work. I, up until last June, was on the board of directors for the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Did a lot of work with them and around them, around their strategic plan. I was on the board for 6 years before I termed off. Currently on the governor's behavioral health task force for restoration of competency stuff. So, I've done it all. I've been in the trenches. I am a family member, both on the addiction side and on the mental health side. So that's where the passionate advocacy comes, because as a family member, it's challenging to get people into care, to keep people in care, to get care paid for. And unfortunately, the area that I work in now is within justice involved individuals. Um, Started that in 2000 and actually left the system after 5 years because I was really disgusted with the fact that no one wanted to get people out and keep people out. And so many of the people that I was working with within the Department of Corrections had addictions and mental health issues. So, had the opportunity 5 years ago to go back into that field with the company I work with now, which is TrackTECH, under the agreement that we were actually going to have a very strong behavioral health component. And we were, as a company, going to work together to make reintegration better and more effective and meet people where they were, getting them the resources that they need.
Well, as someone that has been incarcerated before, I'm just really grateful that what you're doing because we've had some good conversations around that, and you've definitely seen it from many angles. So let's get into that because I think it's great topics. And why do you feel like it's important for people to like discuss justice involvement around incarceration, the system, and addiction?
I think it's important to discuss incarceration because unfortunately that has become the treatment center of choice for many. If you look at the LA County Jail, that is the largest psychiatric hospital in the United States. So when we're looking at incarcerated populations, we're looking at about 65, depending on the research, between 65 and 80% of the people either have a mental health diagnosis, a substance abuse diagnosis, or a trauma diagnosis that can be tied to either mental health or substance abuse. So you're looking at a large percentage of the people that are incarcerated.
And the people I get to see and work with and connect with through various organizations I'm a part of, I sit there and think about people that say, I spent, 6 years in solitary confinement. And I sit there and think of how is that going to help anyone grow in their journey? So what are you actually seeing that you feel can really be changed in this system?
So what we are seeing is the introduction of technology. And the wonderful aspects about technology does meet you where you're at. So the technology that we utilize is based on a smartphone. So it's rare that you see a person without a phone in the world today. Um, about 85% of the entire world's population has access to cell phones. So we can actually deliver programs via cell phone. So we work with an entity called Breaking Free out of the UK who does CBT. And the wonderful, for those that aren't familiar with CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, I'll try not to use the acronyms. For those that are not familiar with cognitive behavioral therapy, what it does is it helps an individual reframe negative thoughts into positive ones. And an example of that might be, why should I try to stay out of going back to prison? Everybody says I'm a failure. Nobody says I'm worth anything. I can't get a job. No one will rent me an apartment. Um, why should I not go back? So, what cognitive behavioral therapy in teaching someone to do a reframe might be, well, yeah, you didn't get this particular job that you applied for, but it doesn't mean that you're not going to get another job tomorrow. This might not have been the best apartment choice for you. Um, you'll find a place that will rent to you, that you can make a home. So it's playing that tape all the way to the end and saying, yes, you can change the music selection. You can change the track, and you can get a job. You can be a part of society. You can be involved in your kids' lives. This doesn't have to be a multi-generational trajectory for your family.
And I'm sure you've seen, I mean, as you've come up with this to help people, how long, and I know it can vary between person, but average, how long can it take for someone to really have a change in their mindset to believe those positive messages since they've had such negative ones for so long?
Okay, so again, it depends on the research, because you'll have researchers that say recovery happens the day you say recovery happens, and that you're making a difference in your life. That is one of the precedents for recovery coaching. You have other researchers that say you need at least 90 days of ongoing reinforcement for the behavior to stick. Some people will say it's even longer. And I mean, if you talk about Prochaska and DiClemente and their stages of change, you can be in pre-contemplation and contemplation for months, potentially even years before you're ready to make that change and to have it stick. So it really depends on the research. But having said that, research isn't everything. I am a firm believer in community supports and having supportive people around you. I know you and I have talked about the benefit of recovery coaching. I jumped on the recovery coaching bandwagon years ago because as a clinician, I saw so many people that had both mental health and substance abuse issues. I saw them go into the substance abuse treatment side and they'd say, oh, well, you're depressed. Come back after you get your depression handled. I saw them on the mental health side say, oh, well, you have an addiction. As soon as you get your addiction under control, come back and we'll work on your mental health issues. So the one thing I really love about recovery coaching is it meets a person where they are and it looks at the whole person. So, huge fan, huge proponent and supporter of recovery coaching. The other thing I will say that I really appreciate about recovery coaching is the role of the coach. The coach is there to really help a person navigate a system based on their own experience. Recovery coaches have their own lived experience. So they may have struggled getting their license, they may have struggled getting a job, they may have struggled um, with housing, but they walk right alongside the individual. Where, having a sponsor, if you're a fan of 12 step, is also great. But the role of the sponsor is really to walk a person through the 12 steps. It doesn't necessarily tie back into how are you going to survive, um, get a house, get a job, you know, other supports. So I think there's plenty of room for both, but I think different people need different things in different steps of their recovery.
Yeah, there's definitely a triage approach in the world of addiction and recovery and mental health. And thanks for laying out kind of the recovery coaching world. Because I don't think a lot of people know really what that is. And you want a fitness coach, right? You go hire a person to help you get in shape, lose the pounds, whatever you're trying to do, and you're going to listen to them. So the same thing with recovery coaching. It's a new aspect. And so you talked about like support. obviously the family system is very important through all this to get their own support and support the loved one that might be struggling. What are some tips or directions you can give the family right now?
So one of the things that we do that comes in that kind of behavioral support package is we have a program called Support Core. And what that does is that allows the justice involved individual to let their parole officer, case manager, probation officer know who the people are in their life that are a positive support for them. Because unfortunately, when you're coming out of the system, there are some people you cannot have contact with. Unfortunately, at times, those are the people that may have the best experience to get you through the steps that you need to. But what we do is we have people pick the people that are going to be part of their support car. And our technology allows us to see whether you've checked in with each other. So if John says Sally is going to be my support core, and the phone recognizes that there's been no text messages or no emails or no phone calls to Sally, it can automatically generate a message that says, hey, you agreed to support John. Reach out, talk to him, see how he's doing. John, call Sally. You said she was your cheerleader. Reach out and connect. I think one of the biggest challenges that we run into in this field is that when people are sick, either with a mental illness or in active addiction, um, they burn their families out. Um, and their families often are the ones that were the targets. So the most hurtful things are said, the most pain is caused in the height of addiction, in the height of their mental illness. And it's really hard for families to keep opening that door and to keep letting that person back until they're in a place where they're well. Um, it's heartbreaking for parents to have to say, no, you can't come over because when you do come over, you threaten us and you say things that are just not okay. And when the person is in the midst of their mental health issues, they don't recognize many times that they're ill, and they don't recognize the symptoms that they may be exhibiting. So I think it's absolutely important for families to connect and get support, either from a 12-step group, or some of the recovery coaches are doing parenting programs and parenting groups now. NAMI is doing some phenomenal work with their programs on family to family, and some of the veterans programs for veterans that are coming back that are very different people. And most of the programs are free. So part of it is just knowing what's out there. And now we seem to be in a world where everything is Zooming, everything is online. So access is really available. And get connected, get that support, because families need the support just as much as the person coming out needs the support.
It's great to have all these different avenues of support now. Back, when I got sober like 19 years ago, or even during my, incarceration times, not a lot of that. So the technology sounds amazing, but I'm curious as to the like probation and parole world. How is that changing of them trying to really come alongside people in their recovery and their rehabilitation instead of maybe some other side of the experiences I've heard where they really could care less?
So I think they're finally recognizing that the data hasn't changed in 20 years. Our recidivism rates are still, according to BJA, 67, 68%, meaning 68% of the people that come out of prison will go back into prison within 9 years. So it's a churn. We, we can't keep doing things the way we're doing it because it's not working. And it's costing our state budgets, it's costing our county budgets a lot of money that could be used in other ways. So um, we are seeing probation officers, case managers, parole officers learning how to do motivational interviewing. We are learning that they are getting classes on how to be trauma informed, which previously they would tell you, I'm not your social worker, but they're recognizing that they can identify early on predictive analytics. And if I know that the month of June historically has been a horrible month for you because that's the month that you lost your child to an overdose, I can be more watchful in the month of June. I can be connecting with you to make sure that you have the support that you need, that you are reaching out, and that I am reaching out to make sure that you're making really good choices. And, you know, one of the things that I use that is now becoming fairly widely used in the corrections industry is the theory of gamification. So if you think back to Candy Crush as an example, um, people spend hours breaking up candy and getting points, and there's no monetary win, but yet they get these great bursts of dopamine, and you know they feel good about, you know, building their farm, building their Sims castle, you know, all of these things. And what we've learned is we can also use technology to recognize when people are doing the right thing. So for instance, I can send a text message if you have made every UA and your UAs have been perfect and show no sign of substance use. I can send you applause. I can go, way to go. I can recognize you and help build up your inner feelings of success. So, using the theories of gamification, we can give feedback. It doesn't take any time, everything can be pre programmed in to recognize, hey, you made your court appointments on time. We can give you a calendar electronically that reminds you to make your appointments. A lot of the um, recidivism rates are tied to technical violations. So if I can help you plan to take a bus at the right time or to look at ways and see that it's going to take you an hour to get across town to be on time to see your supervisor, I've just given you power and control to manage things. I'm reminding you of appointments. We all get crazy. I'll be the first person to say there are things I forget. So having reminders on my phone keep me on time. They keep me getting into the meetings I need to be into. Um, so being able to use technology as it's used today to help people manage all of the things that they are required to do is huge. And parole is starting to recognize it. Probation's starting to recognize it. Um, we've come a long ways from the ankle monitor, which for many, many years, that was the technology that corrections utilized. And it was great. It told you exactly where you were, and it gave you no other information. If you were supposed to be home because of curfew, they could check and your GPS was showing you were at home, you were compliant. Well, the reality is that's great if that's the only thing you had to do in your life was stay home. But people have to go to work, people have to go to treatment, and the ability to use technology today, we use geofences. Great things about geofences. So officers can pre-program them into the computer. And if there are places you are not supposed to be because of your history, um, say there's an area of town that's widely known for heroin sales, um, you will get a notification if you set foot in that geofence.
Mm.
And it tells you, hey, step back. This is really not where you want to go. And it also lets the officer know. Now, if it's a bus ride that just goes through the community, it's going to show that you were on a bus. If you're a sex offender and you're not supposed to be in playgrounds or in schools, um, it will give you those warnings. However, if your AA meeting happens to be at a school on a Saturday, you can program the system so it will allow you into the school on a Saturday to go to your meeting. So
Wow.
there's lots of technology that makes people's jobs easier and helps them not over manage and over sanction people who are trying to do the right thing.
That is very encouraging because again, hopefully people that are listening, you've never been in the system and all those things. You don't have no clue what we're talking about. But again, for someone that has, in hearing your technology, there was always this fear of oh, if I miss the bus or if I do this or they're going to do this. And the system was really set up at that time when I was going through this stuff to fail. You know,
Yeah.
it was to catch you to doing something wrong. And what I hear you saying is we now empower people to be able to do the right things even better.
And to
And not,
catch you doing what
yes,
you're supposed to be doing,
yeah, yeah.
and to recognize, hey, you're doing a good job.
Positive reinforcement.
I'm telling
It's an
you.
amazing thing. So obviously treatment can be really pulled into someone's treatment the
Right.
technology can be pulled into someone's treatment program in a very positive, affirming, empowering way.
Right. We also have video conferencing. So people can meet with their recovery coaches via the telephone. If, unfortunately, we still live in a world of COVID where no one wants to see anybody face to face. Instead of their parole or probation officer making them come down to the office, they can buzz the phone and have a conference call and say, show me that you have enough food in your house to eat. Show me what your environment looks like. So instead of having to take 3 buses and leave work early, have your boss go, really? You're leaving work again for something else? You can step into a quiet room and have your meeting with your PO. You can go outside and have a meeting with your PO. So you're not having to leave work.
Do you see that continuing outside of as our life gets back to normal, depending on when people are watching this now or later? But when things are lifted, do you see that continuing and just saying, hey, let's just do it this way instead of having you go 3 buses to get here?
I do, because for the supervising officers, it helps them to manage really large caseloads. Focus on the people that are struggling. Don't focus all your extra time and effort on people that are doing what they need to do. I also see telehealth continuing on. It really, although it was an adjustment for myself and for our team, and for a lot of the recovery coaches and clinics that I know of and work with, people have it down pat now. There are virtual clubhouses that are doing 80 meetings a week, because if you're in a Zoom environment, you can do meetings all day and all night because people are doing them from their homes. So they're not having to go to a different part of town that may be less safe. They're not having to ride the bus. So I do see it as an efficiency. I think we still have a long ways to go to fully embracing and adopting it, but I see it being a part of treatment. Now, there's always going to be a percentage of the population that absolutely needs that in-person touch point. And I think you have the ability with tools, be it technology or knowledge, to be able to offer both and decide what is the best fit. I mean, for people that live in rural and frontier countries, Elbert County might as well be a rural and frontier country itself. You know, they just don't have the providers, and they may have to drive an hour to get to a group. Wouldn't it be awesome if they could go to 3 groups a week because they don't have to drive, you know? So I do think there's a lot of space for technology going forward.
And in what you're doing in your space also, you're giving people this relaxed, like mental wellness and mental freedom back because they're not having to wonder all these hoops they have to go through, and they can
Right.
actually have, again, a little more freedom to even like enjoy their family, heck, a little bit more. You're giving them back time freedom too.
Well, and I think, when we look at a sanctions-based approach, if a person is doing the right thing, the PO can give them additional privileges and additional resources. So there are rewards that can be had, you know, in addition to that. So it doesn't always have to be just the stick. Sometimes the carrot is a really good way to encourage behavioral change.
I'm excited you decided to step into this space because I know your calendar is full and you are a very busy person, and people always want to have you be a part of this and this, and you manage that well. And I'm excited for this technology because, again, I see what it can do, what it could have done for me in my own situation, but even the stories I hear from so many people, I'm like, man, this could have saved them from having to go back to do time they didn't necessarily need to go do. But the system just kind of was set up to
Right.
have them go back. So you're doing awesome things to change this landscape, and I'm grateful that you decided to be a part of this
Thank
summit.
you.
Is there anything else you want to kind of share with our audience before we kind of close up?
I just want to say that people need people. And, there is a great deal of stigma still that exists in the mental health space, in the behavioral health space, and in the incarcerated space. At the end of the day, about 90% of the population is going to get out of prison. I realize no one wants a halfway house in their neighborhood. No one wants some of these sober living homes in their neighborhoods. But the reality is, if you get to know the people and you get to understand what the backstories are and the trauma and life issues that they were either going through or that came out of their childhood, at the end of the day, we are all people. And I firmly believe that behavioral health is the last uncharted civil rights area in the United States. So I think at this time, when we are looking at um, all of the different aspects, we're looking at criminal justice reform, we're looking at getting rid of cash bail. Take a look and make an informed decision if any of those things end up on your ballot for election. You know, talk to the people that are running for office. Make sure that the people that are being elected reflect your values and reflect the things that are important to you. Um, we had some really great legislative session this year, even with a $3.3 billion cut. We had legislators that understood mental health really needed to not be macheted. Unfortunately, where one doesn't get cuts, others do. So we're probably going to have potholes forever and infrastructure that's falling apart. But if we can get people's lives back together and get them working and contributing, that really makes a difference in our world.
Yeah, so get involved, and it's been fun interviewing you too. I look behind you and I see your door, and I was like, I feel like we're like in a castle or something right now with this wonderful door behind, and I'm like, man, I want to go there. But anyway, you're doing amazing things in our country. It's not only impacting our community here, but all over the place. So thank you for following your passions and like callings that you feel like you need to be working on, and you are making a huge difference. So I'm glad to be in your inner circle with you as people, colleagues in this field. So thank you so much for joining us on the Art of Intervention project.
Thank you, Rob, and thanks for being a champion and pulling this all together. It's a lot of work on your end too.
It's a labor of love for sure. So thanks. All right. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Have a great day.